we just had something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast. We just had something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast.
Hello.
Well, welcome back to another show of Boggles the Mind.
Hello, hello.
And I think if I was going to say one thing to open this show, it's that Boggles the Mind is a name I just don't regret choosing at all. Every week I look around and I think this really boggles my mind. What I'd really like to talk about, just in terms of kind of venting, really, is the difference between, just sounding like an old git for a while, the difference between information now and when I was young. Now, of course, in that period, my perception has changed a great deal. It could be that nothing's really changed. It could be that nothing ever really changes. But I just want to give you a couple of examples I was thinking about yesterday. Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie used to have this it was a comedy show, it's called A Touch of Fry and Laurie or something. And it was okay. It wasn't amazing, but it was okay. And they did some sketch where one of them knocks the door down with a sledgehammer or something. And then at the end of the week on BBC TV, they kind of had to answer people saying, well, what happens if my children start doing this kind of thing? And they were on this show. And I can't remember who the host was. I think it might have been Anne Robinson, because she used to do points of view and all that kind of stuff back in those days. And I think, she was sort of saying, well, what would you say to parents who have children they're worried about reenacting these scenes? And he was saying, give me names and addresses of people who are stupid enough to go out and do something because they saw it on television. I don't think you'd ever see anyone ask that question now. They just take it for granted. If someone sees it on TV, there'll be some guy on a YouTube channel. There'll probably be 1,000 of them on a YouTube channel that day, trying to cash in on people searching for that thing. Let's just say it's pogoing with a stick of dynamite in your mouth. There's going to be 1,000 people tomorrow because it's got coverage. So people are going to search for it because they want to see that funny clip that someone's recorded and put on YouTube. And if you can get a video out with you pogo sticking with a stick of dynamite in your mouth before that search comes along, you're going to cash in. So information has become completely overcome by greed. Information has been destroyed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Let me just do a little bit of a full circle. Let's start with the first point you made. Yeah, Boggles the Mind was a great name to have for the channel. I think it was also, it's a double-edged sword. It was also a hindrance because it automatically put us into a category of conspiracy, which unfortunately with a system that's controlled by algorithms kind of made it very difficult for us to get a foothold with all these other content creators and so forth. But it was always been enjoyable. Now, in regards to information, which is what Boggles the Mind tries to put out there, information that is not mainstream, yeah, it's very difficult for certain types of information, for the system to allow certain types of information to spread, and for education purposes of the masses. That just indicates to me that we are in a massive control system. A control system which will only allow topics and subjects that serve the purpose of the elite, ultimately. That they can get their messaging out, they can get what they perceive to be the truth, history, religion, whatever it is, out in a certain format for people to follow and so forth.
Well, hang on a second. But what I'm trying to say is that YouTube is a fantastic excuse for that. It's like Wikipedia. As soon as you make something public, you can blame everyone else for the information being wrong, right? So if you think about something like Wikipedia, every single chemist on Earth, that the guy who's the expert on nobelium, or the girl who's the expert on praseodymium or lawrencium, she'll sit down and write a paper about lawrencium that will give that website incredible credibility. Thank you. Yeah. Then, if I go into the back end of that website and make it look like everyone else has tried to write a page about 9/11, but I get to choose which one it is, I've got a fabulous way of enforcing a credibility of a belief system about that, whatever I want to write about 9/11. And I can do the same thing with YouTube.
But it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It doesn't matter how many people make a video about 9/11, I can always go into the back door and make my video top.
True, but credibility is a double-edged sword at the end of the day. Yes, you will have an expert that can start a page and write very interesting theses on certain subject matters that aren't mainstream, and then someone else can hijack that and make money out of it and get a following out of it, and they haven't got any credibility themselves. And it's very difficult.
That's perfect.
And that's
Because
it's
that means
perfect,
you
but it's
can
also
blame-
worrying.
It means you can blame them, because
Yeah.
all information has become irrelevant. There's no way you can know whether the person on Wikipedia is really writing what they're talking about, or whether they are just a maniac who believes that
Well, I think it's been proven that they are more on the side, your second option, of maniacs, where there are a cabal of people who decide what is able to be put out there and what isn't, based on their preferences or on their whatever their agenda is, or whoever writes that agenda.
Sure. But what? No, absolutely. Let's just say that I was making a video or writing a page about californium, the element californium, and I wrote down all about the electron rings and about the neutrons and what it's useful for and where it melts at, and someone can come along and put a bit on the end of that page that has no relevance whatsoever to what anything anyone believes in the mainstream. Now, that could turn out to be true in 20 years' time, but as that scientist, I'm definitely going to come back from my holiday and say, whoa, what's someone done here? I'm going to erase that bit and put it back to the web. And that's great, because californium is a very, very definable thing.
Yes.
As soon as I write a page about what happened on 9/11, that is something that is incredibly contestable.
Very
and yet
contested.
There is a central place where Google will take you when you type in what happened on 9/11. It will take you to Wikipedia, to that page,
And give you the government script.
and give you that exact script, which might not have anything to do with reality. And it's an interesting idea, I think, and this is one of the things I wanted to start talking about, is when I was younger, all those years ago, decades and decades and decades ago, when you look something up, who's the inventor of this? That was who the inventor of that was. There was no question about it. Nowadays, oh no, it was actually a guy in Poland. No, it was actually a guy in the Czech Republic.
It usually was a
Actually,
CD-ROM that you'd get and put in your
Exactly.
PC encyclopedia.
No, it was actually a girl in frickin' Kazakhstan. No,
Yeah.
it was it's not everything is a matter of opinion. Everything is.
It seems that way now, more so than ever.
So that's, to me, one of the big shifts. And of course, that was always true. It's just like Obi-Wan Kenobi says, many of the truths we cling to matter greatly upon your point of view. And it's true. There is no single inventor of anything, because without people before them, they couldn't have known how to do that stuff.
Yeah, the components of everything that takes to actually
It's
build
all-
the picture,
exactly,
I think. And
exactly.
And I think that is very relevant, especially with 9/11. I think there are so many components that are now coming to light, now that we've seen everything that's going on currently with Iran, with Israel. We know that there are forces, secret forces, or I think the Secret Service more than anything, that have manipulated wars and created situations that never really needed to happen.
Well, let's talk about that thing we were just looking at, where we're looking at William Cooper,
Yeah.
who was talking about a TV interview on CNN where some bonehead from CNN walked into Osama bin Laden's cave, in inverted commas, with all of his generals, all of his colonels and everything, and sat down, pointed the camera at them and said, "So, what's going on, Osama?" And he went, "Oh, well, this is my chief of bombs, and this is my chief of war, and we're going to blow up Israel, I'm going to blow up America." And that was on television
Yeah.
in June of that year.
Or was it allowed to be on television?
Well, it's not really the point, is it?
Was it allowed
The
to be on
first problem
television?
is, right, as Bill Cooper says, how could CNN find out before the CIA? How could that ever be? Even if CNN found out, the CIA would get there first. There's no way that CNN would get there as quickly as the CIA could. They could get in a military jet to go there straight away and drop a cluster bomb on it.
Yeah.
As soon as their people in CNN
They were
picked
allowed.
up,
They were allowed
that
to be
whole
there,
thing was a
ultimately.
setup.
Yes.
He was a CIA agent even then.
Yeah.
He had to be. He was a CIA agent designed to take the fall to destroy his own people. It's a very difficult thing to understand how these people get to these situations, but
I think that leads on to a wider picture
You know-
where the CIA aren't the CIA. They are the fixers for the elite, and the elite make the agenda.
Well,
and that's
I think
ultimately what it is.
I think that's a very small part of the CIA. I mean, 80% of the CIA, just like Wikipedia, 80% of the CIA are people sitting down at a desk believing they're really doing hard work for the US government, and they really are. The simple truth is the work they do makes no difference, because the 20% work for people who are completely bonkers.
And they pull the strings.
Well,
Well, they do. They pull the strings.
they make the plan. I mean,
Yeah.
the plan happens at a way higher level than the CIA. I think the CIA just sort of come and go. They have their own sort of agendas and stuff. But
Yeah.
I think at the highest level, it's not any organisation. It's nothing you can name.
It's a secret society. That's what ultimately makes the decision. But yeah, I mean, back to your point on he was the useful idiot at the time, but the timing of that interview was, crucial.
But think about that ridiculousness of that. That people were sitting at home thinking, oh yeah, he's going to bomb us soon. How terrible. They weren't thinking, well, hang on a minute. Well, why didn't he kill everyone?
Yeah.
What they got that camera? They got that camera all the way back to the studio with the tape recorder, the video and everything, and he didn't shoot them. Or
But that one, what you're looking at.
why would you tell the Americans you're going to bomb them on national television?
But this goes back to the point of the show. This is the early noughties, so the way information was digested was through official lines. It was through mainstream.
Yes.
We didn't have opinions. We didn't have YouTube to have an opinion. People bouncing off, like people like us going, well, what the hell is this? This is obviously something not right here. You didn't have those platforms to counter
No.
everything you saw.
The only person you had to talk to about it was your grandfather, or who that might have a crazy opinion.
And they were skewed anyway, their opinions. There wasn't any sort of credibility where you're having multi-facets of information from many different people who are supposed to be experts or have some sort of experience in the subject matter. And you couldn't really disseminate the information for what it really was. You could only take it for what you were being shown, and then you had to sit in your own sofa in your own seat and ponder in your mind, what did I just watch, and what was the meaning of that, and is that true, is that not? You couldn't disseminate it properly, whereas now it's very difficult for them to pull these things off, because like you said, there'll be 100 people tomorrow with an opinion on it.
Hang on. That's just how it seems.
Well, that's how it seems.
But we need to go back to the 80-20 rule. There's 80 million people making a video on YouTube right now. But if I want to pick the 3% that are going to be successful, and I'm behind the scenes, I can do that. There's all kinds of things that I can do. YouTube is something incredibly powerful. It can't just be left to be an algorithm. That's just not feasible. Because sooner or later, people are going to realise that CNN isn't... I mean, look what's happened to something like CNN or the Independent or all
BBC.
These things are just a waste of space. Everyone knows they're full of lies.
Yeah, the game's up with them.
There's
Game's
no
up
one
with
watching.
mainstream.
Who the hell watches CNN News? Well, I mean, maybe
With seriousnly.
maybe some people do. Maybe if there's CNN, there's been an explosion. I mean, you remember what the news used to be like? They'd show you, a lady would come on, sit down at the desk and go, there's been a Russian or a Chinese birdie-bird missile, and there'd be a tiny picture in the corner of something completely unidentifiable.
Yeah.
There's not a picture of anything. It's just, there's been a Russian missile. You need to be careful because the Russians are firing missiles.
Low production
The
value,
Chinese are firing
yeah.
missiles. The Koreans are firing missiles. Where's the evidence?
Yeah. But at the same time, a YouTuber wouldn't be able to produce the evidence either. They haven't got a news team on site recording all the stuff. So it's filler stuff, isn't it? It's filler imagery. Obviously, the way we digest information is something we have to be hooked on, and we have to be interested in it. And to keep someone's interest, you have to have some imagery, you have to have some sounds. Obviously,
But the
advantage they have
thing
is they have experts they have experts they call in to then question. Now, can you trust those experts? Who knows?
But there are people on YouTube who build missiles who can come on and go, well, actually, you couldn't fire that from there, you couldn't do this. So there's a level of truth, you know.
But they're not verifiable. That's the problem. That verifying an expert is very difficult for us to obviously believe, for the mainstream media and also for YouTubers. I think both kind of need to be tested and to gain an audience's trust. You know, you can sit a missile expert down, and they could put a name up on the screen, and this is CNN, for example, and you could assume that they've done their vetting and everything, and that guy's kosher. That guy could have just been a CIA plant.
I'm not talking about CNN. I'm talking about people.
Just generalising.
Yeah, I'm talking about people that can talk with authority. I mean, you know when someone knows what they're talking about.
True, you do,
You know.
but you don't know if they are. You don't know if they are vetted and they're credible 100%.
Well, yeah, but there are ways that, you know, when you can show, like, this is my Raytheon badge, this is where I used to work, and I used to build rockets.
Yeah.
This is the kind of rocket I used to work on an X1 mine. But that, you know, there's this is something you've never seen on mainstream.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you look at the way that some of the the depth of some of the investigation that goes on with some of the guys on stuff like, not necessarily on YouTube, but Odyssey or a lot of the other channels, you know, the time they spend investigating, you don't realise how terrible mainstream journalism is until you start watching some of the fringe stuff.
Yeah.
Because these guys go to the end of the earth. It's, you know,
And they get the receipts, don't they? They really do go out because they have to. They have to go that extra mile to prove to their audience that, you know, we're going a step above what the mainstream media are going, because I'm giving you the receipts. Here's the paperwork. Here are the people I spoke to, and they give you a little image, like you just said. They'll flash their ID and say, "I used to work for, you know, Raytheon," and so forth. You know, they're going the extra mile, which mainstream media never did or never does. It just gives you a name.
They treat it more like someone writing a book.
Yeah, and they have to.
You know, they go and meet all the people. And, you know, say, well, you know, what was this guy really like in history? Have you got any proof? Have you got any papers? Have you got any diaries? The kind of thing that the mainstream media aren't interested in. They're trying to build a picture of an enemy that they want to take your money to send your children to blow up. They don't want you to have any idea what's really going on.
And they have a restricted time slot to do it in. And they have people sponsoring them for the channel or whatever, the news channel, CNN, BBC, whatever. And yeah, they are restricted and constrained, and that's the advantage of YouTube. That's the advantage. These people don't need to.
BBC aren't constrained. I mean, they could make.
Well, they are constrained. They're constrained by regulation. They're constrained by government restrictions. They're constrained by many things.
They could send all kinds of researchers out if they wanted to find out the truth about stuff.
They can, but they never have really. They've given us a polished version of something. And they haven't gone into full detail of everything.
But I think you're talking very much about the BBC today. I mean, like, you know, sort of 30, 40 years ago, you could quite often turn on BBC and see a TV show that's basically a bloke who's an expert in, you know, or I don't know, let's just say Picasso or something. And he's, you know, he's obviously gone off with one bloke with a camera and one bloke and spent, you know, sort of 8 weeks trying to get all of his knowledge into half an hour from TV, but you just don't see that kind of television anymore. Nowadays, It's kind of, hi, I'm Brian Cox, and this is going to be, you know, it's very much about an identity of one person.
Production.
I'm Jim Arcolelli, I'm Yadida. You never just see, hello and welcome to. It's much more about like American TV. Hi, I'm Murderer. This is me. The most important thing is that I'm here and it's my brand and everything else. And that's what I think has changed. You know, nowadays it has to be Brian Cox's idea about the Milky Way. Because he's become an authority figure to people.
Yeah, he's the selected authority figure, and he hasn't really done much to earn that, other than being, you know, put on a platform in front of everyone and told, you know, this is, you know, XD Ream singer, and he happens to have a physics degree, so trust him, everyone. You know, he's quite quirky, he's got long hair, he's not your stuffy old physicist like you'd expect, you know. and that kind of deception of the mass population is easily done. You know, people are easily deceived.
Totally. He's somebody who's constructed. I mean, he got a DNA level physics. I was in the same class as at least 10 people who got a flipping A. Why weren't any of those people selected? People who got an A in their sleep. You know, why would you pick someone who used to be in a pop band who got a D and kind of made their way through later? There were kids doing, I mean, in my school there were kids doing maths and further maths with physics and chemistry. Guys who could, you know, if they were on TV today, you would really listen to them because they really knew their stuff. Brian Cox doesn't know that. I mean, you know, he's an authority figure. You see shows where Jim Al-Khalili asks Brian Cox the simplest explanation for quantum physics. Brian Cox is an astronomer. He's as far away from quantum physics as you can get. He's dealing with planets. Quantum physics is below the wavelength of a beam of light.
Yeah.
But he's become an authority figure for every single thing to do with our world.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how they construct these people.
Yeah, he's a presenter. He's a face. Again, that is why that's why I think the general populace, a lot more people are leading into YouTube and personal creators, you know, content creators over BBC, over CNN, because there's that personal touch. Like you said, they're not only are they giving you a personal touch from a level, but they are going out of their way because they have to try and prove their credentials. Like you say, they'll flash their IDs, they'll give you some background, and you can look it up, you know. And you know, they come across because they're specialists. They are focused on that subject. They're not just giving you they're not covering a broad spectrum of different subjects, giving you the impression that they're an expert.
But
and that's
it
important.
has that side to it, but it also has another side to it, in that it will destroy every non-American outlet, right?
And yeah, can you expand on that?
Because the BBC, right, they'll make a TV show about something or other. It'll be on YouTube the next day. Now, the BBC might say to you, but 3 months down the line, they might say, oh, it's gone on YouTube. We need to put in a license thing to bang against it, say we don't want to run it. And YouTube will say, well, if you're going to do that, then we'll get rid of the Graham Norton channel. And the BBC say, oh, well, no, we don't want to do that. So suddenly their material's making money for YouTube, even though YouTube had nothing to do with the production of that whatsoever.
Of course.
So suddenly, when people want to watch Only Connect, they go and watch it on YouTube because they've formed that habit. Even though the BBC make it, YouTube make the money out of it. So suddenly, you know, the production company that made Only Connect for the BBC license off them, suddenly start their own channel on YouTube and start making money directly on YouTube. So the money and the views begin to get sucked out of the BBC into a Central American place. So think about a Russian channel. The Russians trying to raise a problem with YouTube. YouTube just couldn't care flipping less. The Russians, I'm sorry, we don't speak Russian. So it takes them 6 months to get a license blocked on something like Hardcore Henry or something. A non-American film will be on YouTube the next day as a pirated copy, and everyone will watch it on there. And none of the original filmmakers will make any money out of it. It'll just be on YouTube from somebody who's not even related to the production of that film. So all those views will be sucked into YouTube. Every other outlet will be destroyed by something like YouTube. And that's a huge part of the purpose of it, if you ask me. That's why Google own it. It is basically, you know, it's like the almighty Zarlak. It's a sort of sandpit sucking every other thing on earth into it.
Yeah,
Soon
it doesn't
the BBC,
discriminate. It will just...
The BBC will be gone very, very soon. You know, something like Amazon is okay because they have a huge influx of cash from other sources,
and they can lock in their productions onto their viewing channels because they have their own, you know, channel.
But also, if you think about something like Odyssey or any of the alternative kind of fringe YouTube Daily Motion and things, all that stuff's hosted on Amazon, like S2 or whatever they call it. The whole of that, all of the apps in the States are hosted on Amazon or Azure or whatever Microsoft call their one. And Google have their own one as well. It's a single place where every single thing will be sucked into it. I mean, if you look at all these companies now, they just resell American stuff. That's all they do. You know.
Yeah, I mean, but where does it end? You know, but at the same time, I'm not sad about that. I'm not upset that YouTube is taking the mainstream mantle, because the mainstream mantle's failed us. It's always been.
Hang on a sec. As soon as there's one provider, they can do anything they want.
True, I understand that perspective. But it all depends on
It is pure fascism. Once there's only one of them.
Yeah, you've got to. All right, I concede you've got a fair point there. But what alternative do we have? You either have mainstream or you have YouTube, and then YouTube becomes mainstream, and then what? Then what do we do? You know, so we have to find. We're talking about information here, especially in regards to our show, Boggles the Mind. We're interested in information that's not mainstream. It's not something that people want to talk about, or you know, we want to talk about aliens. We want to talk about secret societies. We want to talk about all these different things that the mainstream would never dare touch. You know, and people, I think a lot of people are interested in it, but they're kind of shooed away from it. And the only thing that we could use, any real platform that we can use to get messages across or to learn information on is YouTube. You're not going to go to BBC and look it up. You're not going to go to CNN's website and look anything up, because there's nothing on there.
Well, okay, I hear what you're saying, but once again, we're back to that problem of Wikipedia, of the credibility. You know, you just assume that because every video that's being made on Earth winds up on YouTube, that you're going to be able to find something meaningful. But the volume of video means that they can use it as an excuse to give you anything they want. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, the algorithm could just put forth its choice, but you have to.
If you really dig, and I'm talking about it very much like it is on Google. If you get to like page 46, do you know what I mean? And you can start finding some stuff that's really fringe. One of the things I was going to say, actually, is I have noticed that, 2015 came along and was like the sort of annihilation of conspiracy on YouTube and Google. It was just kind of blown to bits. And that all disappeared. And up until certainly COVID, if you said anything that wasn't right down the line of the mainstream, you were
wiped out. Yeah.
Nowadays, I notice that things have changed. I mean, if you've typed in something crazy like flat Earth in 2022, all you would ever get was people making fun of it. Somehow things have changed. Not that I type flat in Earth as something I want to look up particularly, but just to find out how crazy things are. If you want to, know where crazy is, start with flat Earth.
Yeah.
You're talking about something that every single amateur astronomer completely disproves instantly beyond question, but people still believe it. Now, of course, what I find really fascinating about something like flat Earth is it is disprovable. Buddhism isn't, but flat Earth is. Flat Earth is disprovable very, very easily. But of course, flat Earth isn't really about the shape of the Earth. It's about it's almost like it's refusing to take. It's like refuting the mainstream version of everything. It's where your distrust has become so great, you've just decided to believe what you're going to believe, regardless of what anyone tells you.
It seems like the tip of the iceberg for larger conspiracies, such as we are in a fish tank, some sort of experiment. We're grown in this environment that is it could lead on to so many different things.
Religious. It's highly religious.
It can go down religion. It can go down everything. But it is the tip of the iceberg. It's the starting point for you to then branch off into other conspiracies based on that sort of theories as well.
I think it's like a complete refusal of acknowledging anything online. I don't want to hear about this rubbish anymore. I just want to read the Bible. The Bible says the earth is flat, so that's what I'm going to believe. So heck with everything else. And then they go online and they start talking about it. Where's the irony in that? And I think that's they don't go online to hear, they go online to preach, and that's why they get such a hard time, I think.
Yeah, but like anything floats at YouTube, like you said, flat Earth, it's very difficult to believe, and it is scientifically, disproven quite quickly. And but on serious subjects or something like current affairs and so forth, it's very difficult as well for YouTube to really give you an expert that gives you facts, because it's very difficult. Let's say you talk about like the Iran war.
There are no facts.
There are no facts on YouTube for.
There's no facts in something that's made of lies.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, let's say you were interested in reporting some information on it. You don't have any boots on the ground. You're relying on mainstream to give you that information. Or if you're lucky enough, you might have a contact in the war zone.
How could mainstream have information about the enemy?
Well, no. I'm talking about the general war. They have people on the warships. They have people in the bases. They have people in the region that report back information. Now, obviously, they don't have people in Iran to report back or direct it. They might do.
Who has people on warships to report back information?
CNN, BBC. But
I've never seen any evidence of that. I mean, maybe they might do occasionally.
They do, but then they're only allowed to release information when the Navy permits it. It's controlled. So that's what I'm saying. It is controlled.
I mean, it might not even be real.
But
they could just be sitting in Portsmouth Harbour.
But what I'm leading on to is then you'll see Instagram and sometimes YouTube. You'll see people in flats just watching missiles just hit and impact the city or impact distant bases or whatever that they're impacting. So you're getting a kind of feel of, right, this is really happening.
If they've let the internet work. I mean, bear in mind that YouTube could very easily block internet access to those people just by IP address alone. They could very easily shut down Iran being able to get anything out. Just saying.
Well, you haven't seen much from Iran. That's the thing.
Well, I'm just saying that you're talking about something. You're assuming that YouTube is a completely fair reason.
I'm not. I'm just saying that it's very difficult. That's my whole point. It's very difficult to take on board what these things are saying.
They could do pictures of
exactly.
anything. They could have hundreds of videos of Israelis being blown up, ready to go.
That's the point I'm making. It's very difficult for YouTube to get a foothold, like for content creators on YouTube, to report on things like that, because they don't have that access. And we are now obviously reliant on mainstream again for information in regards to big things like news.
Well, yeah, sure, okay. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that mainstream are trying to build an enemy. They
exactly.
Don't care about
We're
reality.
being manipulated.
They don't care about reality. Why would they tell you what's going on
exactly,
in Iran?
But we're reliant on it. That's where YouTube kind of falls flat, because we're reliant now on mainstream, which is feeding us lies.
But it's always been that way.
Oh, of course, it's
Germany, as in Britain, was Napoleon was always like that. It was always that way. They are trying to build an enemy to justify what their plans are.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
They've never cared about information, never. I mean, that system's been going on for a very long time. YouTube is something different, but it's just like Wikipedia. It's got lots of truth in it. But that means you can fill it with a little bit of lies here and there, and those lies will come through like the truth. So it's at least as dangerous as mainstream media, probably.
Well, it's a smorgasbord, and now with the addition of AI, you visually cannot disseminate certain things.
Well,
it's not. It's obviously not.
It's not that good yet.
Not that good, but it's good enough to fool the average person that really cannot disseminate what's real and what's not. But then, so it's dangerous.
So is taking a picture of a hubcap when you throw it through with a crack in where it's saying it's a UFO. It's always been possible to create believable material through some means. So I don't know that AI is a really big game changer like that.
I don't think it's a game changer. I think it's something to be wary of when it comes to disseminating information, because now, not only are you being fed something with a little sprinkles of lies, but you're also being shown visually things with a little bit of sprinkle of lies. And that, for the average person that doesn't like to question it, obviously I will question most things because that's my nature. But the general populace would not. They're easily manipulated, and that's where it becomes very dangerous again.
Well, no question. But also, it's interesting about when you see how the agenda of things works, right? If you think about something like the Falklands War, There's only one way to get information back from the Falklands War, and that's to be in the Falklands being bombed by the Argentines. So you're only going to get the most dedicated, courageous kind of reporters in that situation. You're not going to get your sort of standing in a car park with a bit of yellow tape behind saying "Do not pass this line," making up lies about people. Kind of report. You're not going to get those kind of people in that environment. Plus, you know, in general terms, that's quite a simple war, isn't it? I mean, you think about that. It's an invasion where you're taking something back.
Well, there was a news corps that was sent down with the fleet when the fleet was sent down there, so everyone was relying on what that news corps actually reported on, and that was obviously controlled by the government.
Sure, but even quite a lot of the news wasn't that favourable. If you think about the news that came back, a lot of that news, like when they sank the Belgrano, a lot of people in Britain thought that was totally unreasonable behaviour, you know.
But obviously they didn't. Did they realise that we already had 3 destroyers sank? You know, when the landing party went there.
Well, sure, but
Yeah.
the tactics of the Belgrano were, if you look at the tactics of the war, blowing up the Belgrano made sure they never sent their carrier.
Exactly. Yeah, they wanted them to be fearful of the
Exactly.
subs all around the waters. That's why they did it. Yeah.
Just like they did with the blowing up the runway. But that was a very simple war. There's no good and bad in it. It's just people fighting over land. There's one side versus another. There's no reason to lie. When you've got something like Afghanistan, which is a country even now I can't understand why everyone tries to invade. Why don't you invade? I mean, surely you'd be better off invading France. There's much more.
There is obviously valuable things there.
There's
in the
much
ground.
more in France than there
Yeah.
is in
Well,
Afghanistan.
We're assuming.
Well, look, come on. It can't be. Whatever it is in Afghanistan, it can't be the same thing Napoleon was after. Napoleon wasn't after lithium, was he? I mean, do you know what I mean? There's something about that place that everyone tries to evade, and no one ever pulls it off. You know, they call it the graveyard of empires. I mean, I don't really think that's... I think it's just whoever's really in control, not mentioning any names, but whoever's really in control has a real hard-on for Afghanistan. I don't know why, but there's something about, like, when they get to the end of their tether and they realise it's time to sort of burn this civilization and start a new one, they just throw everything they've got at Afghanistan. Maybe it's just how harsh it is, you know, how impenetrable it is.
Well,
and
yeah,
it can take so much of the armed forces there, and it's such a stretch. It's basically the very last of the Semites. The Semites go from Morocco to Afghanistan, basically, don't they?
Yeah, it's quite landlocked, and it's half mountains, half desert. It's a very strange place.
Yeah, it's like a
got
lot of
very
like the sort of
strange
Kazakhstan
geographical
and a lot of those
layout.
places are in that neck, and
Yeah.
it's got all kinds of,
And it borders many main countries.
and it's also kind of on the very edge of the Himalayas, but not quite, and it's got, you know, it's got every single kind of thing in it. I mean, it really does make you wonder if that's really where,
Mythical creatures lie.
or Eden, or do you know what I mean? Something.
Yeah.
On top of the mountains up there, there's something, you know, what are they after?
There's something spiritual with that place that,
Yeah,
attracts.
it never goes away, does it?
Yeah, the big guns.
I mean, 250 years, and they're still trying to get in. They still haven't put whoever they are. I mean, it is quite amazing. But let's switch pace a little bit, to at least angle a little bit, because I do want to talk about UFO.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
UAP. I know it's just they're changing the name of it like they do always.
Well, yeah, it's the digestible. It's the digestible acceptance of the mainstream that takes precedent over actual facts.
What do you think has changed the most in the last 40 years? I mean, if you think about back to being like, you know, pre-X-Files, right? The idea of a UFO was, in the mainstream media, was pretty much a joke.
Well, it was back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the Hammer films, kind of the black and white, googly monsters, googly eyes, kind of made it look comical.
But but you're talking about in
Comedic,
entertainment.
in a sense.
Entertainment.
Entertainment-wise, and entertainment's always been the driver for UFOs, I think, in the past.
Well, that's definitely true, isn't it?
Yeah,
It started in the 50s America with all kinds of lights reporting the news.
Yeah, Hollywood's been the domain of where the narrative goes, and I think that's moved away now. Where obviously people have taken it more seriously. People are seeing things a lot more now, and people have basically supercomputers in their hands where they can record things. Also, I think the abduction side of UFOs is kind of now coming to settle down. People are kind of now listening to abductees, and the actual comparisons between every story is starting to mold together a picture where we're getting an idea of some sort of program going on behind the scenes that we have no idea what they want, but they all want your genetics and they all want to have a look at your private parts and do something with it, and then they just want to blank your memory and drop you off somewhere inconvenient and leave you with some either no memory of it at all or some strange memories.
Okay, well, hang on a sec. Let's pause there for a second, because we're talking about you're talking about something that very much sort of came into the throw of the sort of mainstream with something like
well, Betty and Barney Hill were the first abductee cases that the mainstream kind of covered and everyone kind of gravitates
but
to.
You're talking about the idea that people get into some sort of craft somewhere else and come here.
I personally don't believe that. I believe that they're already here and they're coming from a base. But
what do you mean here?
I believe that all these extraterrestrial encounters are between beings that have bases on the Earth or in the oceans, and they are basically...
Okay, but they are physical beings in
They
this
are physical
realm.
Beings that...
So they have tea and cup, and they wake up in the morning and use the lavatory and stuff like that?
Well,
or...
no, they don't.
They don't. So what are they?
They are... Well, I think the mainstream is more heading towards interdimensional beings that exist on a different plane than we do.
Okay, well, in that case, we're not talking about UFOs so much, are you?
We're
Talking
talking about gods,
You're talking about...
deities.
Well, no, you're talking about something that is perceivable but isn't tangible.
To some degree, yes.
Which, to me, I think that's kind of where media has kind of brought us to. I think it all started to begin with things like Carlos Castaneda in Mexico, meeting Don Juan Matas, this kind of guy, and he was allowed to write books and talk about it on radio stations in a way that if he showed up today, I don't think he would get away with that kind of thing, right? He was an anthropological student in UCLA who one day walked up to a bloke somewhere in Mexico and said, "Oh, I'm a student, and I want to know all about herbs and the way you guys used to do stuff and all this kind of stuff." And this guy was kind of gave him this sort of quizzical look and sort of took him off somewhere and started feeding him ayahuasca or peyote or whatever it was,
Right,
and
right.
took him on this journey. And
Yeah.
he wrote this incredible series of books where there's two sides to the brain, a left side and a right side. And the left side is the tonal, in other words, the word side of the brain, where history began with the written word. And this is the tonal, the materialist side of the brain. And then there's the Nagual, which is what he calls the spirit. But it's where the inorganic beings live, which basically, by description, sound like the Greys.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, they are right here, right now.
Yeah, we obviously are on the right vibrational
Whatever
level
it is,
to
however you want to think about
experience
whatever it
them
is.
from our senses. No.
But a lot of people nowadays are starting to because a lot of the sort of shamanistic kind of ways of thinking and all these other things are starting to come in together. Do you know what I mean? Like things like salvia and DMT and all these things are starting to appear to be the same as peyote and ayahuasca.
I don't think they're starting to be. Obviously, these old, where they originate from, these old communities and these old isolated tribes, be it in South America, be it in Africa, Asia, they all report these beings either physically or through shamanistic ritual to be real, and they have done for thousands of years.
Absolutely.
I think now that the West has started to cop onto these entities and the link between that and
hang on a second. Remember that we wiped them out in the West. Remember the witch hunts and everything. That wasn't just a load of. You mean in the media they pretend that was, some sort of terrible, heinous crime of murdering people that could read and write. But of course, now we're starting to realise that probably wasn't the case. These people were probably experimenting with DMT, ayahuasca, peyote, salvia,
not
sage.
experimenting. It was part of their culture.
Exactly. In other words, they had far more spiritual capability than something like the church.
Yeah, they probably had some sort of powers that we've lost now in regards to telepathy.
So the church was used as a way to hunt these people down and destroy a huge part of our history.
Yeah, spirituality.
And as if you look at our history now, all of our history is the written word, which is only the left-hand side of the brain of our history. It's not the other side of our history. And when you hear people talk about, he's from the other side, he's going through straight on through to the other side, it starts to make you realise these people are all talking about the same thing, that the world is in two halves, just like we are.
Well, true, there's the spiritual half and then there's the controlled half. I mean, for instance, let's say New Year's Eve. Why are we celebrating New Year's in the 31st of December, seasonally when nothing grows and nothing's new, when it should be in spring, because that's the natural earth way of a new year, Also,
in this part of the world, for sure.
Yeah. Well, generally, yeah.
Well, it's very different in
it depends on
it
depends on if you're on the equator, what for. But these things are deliberately manipulated. Let's say the birth of Jesus, Christmas time. Why are people being pushed for December when that's not when he was born? He was born in Easter. These things are manipulated and deliberately changed to change people's reality.
Well, then there's another question about
consciousness.
Who Jesus really was. I mean, if he was the Son of God, not mentioning the inorganic beings seems like quite a big oversight to me. The whole
he
thing
was one of them.
Well, if he
most
was,
likely,
if he was one of them, then I wouldn't necessarily say that that's so ridiculous. I mean,
that's what I believe anyway.
If he really was an inorganic being that was crossing over, because I know they can make themselves, apparently, according to Castaneda, according to Jill Taylor, all the rest of it, they can emulate us. If that's really who he was, I suppose he wouldn't give away about the Nagwal. He would just try and basically calm down the people living in the material world.
Well, he'd try and get them within their physical realm into a place where everyone loved each other and respected each other, and he raised consciousness and raised the vibrations of people, and that in itself will help people to ascend to those other levels eventually. And that's what's been cut off from the church, and what's been cut off from the elite is that level of spirituality and consciousness has been tapped.
The irony is he was used to destroy the shamans.
Yes, they used his name, and that's the irony of it, and that's where these devil worshippers or whatever these entities are, have tried to hijack society and push them with their own narrative to control them.
I think that's a really interesting point, and that last point you make, the last term you mentioned there, is extremely important, because something I never really considered would be something that I might ever even consider. Something that in terms of the idea of these entities now, where people are reporting things like demons. I mean, that would have been a laughingstock to most people up until even today.
Well, yeah, you have those modern presenters such as Alex Jones, Joe Rogan, who kind of, push these demons and entities and alternative realities more on mainstream through their production, and it's kind of opened people's eyes to it. Now, Those two characters in themselves, they're a subject on their own, aren't they? Really?
Well, they're completely separate things, though. I mean, one's been overtaken by the other, right? I mean, Alex Jones and Infowars used to be an important channel on however it's out. I mean, it was pre-YouTube, really.
Yeah.
It was its own website. You know, people forget that Infowars was pre-YouTube. YouTube destroyed Infowars. And then Rogan rose, the rise of Rogan. And when you look at who Rogan is, he's not so different to Jones. He's a big, chunky fella with a big round head. He's got a big, kind of...
He's a more refined Jones because he's obviously trained in presenting because he has his experience from his TV years.
Well, because he doesn't push an agenda. He just listens.
No.
So he has a much simpler job.
Yeah.
Alex Jones was a man who was telling you, what the hell's going on? What's the matter with you? Get up and you've got to stop these people. What's the matter with you?
Yeah.
But he was trying to tell you that what we're talking about now. He's trying to tell you the world's controlled by a secret society. If you don't get your finger out of your backside, they're going to destroy us all. And here we are 7 wars later, and nothing's changed.
No.
That's why Alex Jones was so upset, because he was sitting
Pushing
there
the
going...
message that
Joe Rogan just sits there and goes, so what do you think about yada?
He just asked the question. He's passive.
I bet he doesn't even write those questions. He's probably got quite a huge team.
And he comes across to me as one of the elite controllers. They control him and get the narrative, whatever narrative they want to push through him, subtly.
Well, I think he used to be a moon landing denier. That's how I first heard of him. Was on those two magician guys, one that never speaks.
Penn and Teller?
Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
The big one of those two was going on about how he first met Joe Rogan. They got on like a house on fire, and then Joe Rogan started going, of course, man, but they never landed on the moon and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? So he put him in touch with the guy from Bad Astronomy, that little kind of he's quite an interesting bloke, but he's not the best sort of person you'd want in an argument kind of person, really. And they sort of got him together with Joe Rogan, and it very much ended like that sort of that when Graham Hancock talked to that archaeologist. You never really felt like it was resolved. It kind of felt like, could it have done? Could it not have done? Because archaeology and landing on the moon, no one's got any real facts. It's all dancing in the dark. Yeah. And Rogan gradually kind of, when people ask him about it more and more, he'd sort of say, I'll tell you what, the moon landing's a real head spinner, I've got no idea what happened, you look into it.
He goes down the middle, doesn't he?
Now he just sits on the fence.
Yeah, that's all he ever does now.
So he's gone from being, he kind of came in and took over Alex Jones's kind of place in society.
Of conspiracy,
YouTube,
yeah.
And then he's gradually slid towards the middle.
Yeah, which is where
everybody wants him to be.
Yeah.
So, is that just an accident? I doubt he's even conscious of it. I don't think he's like a decision maker. I think he's kind of just
he's a pawn. He's a useful idiot.
He's just very, very happy.
But they had to get Alex Jones out the scene because Alex Jones was the
kind of man who would do a show about the guys at Yale, the Bonesmen.
Yeah.
All the presidents are from the same bloody club in Yale. Look at what's going on in your country. He was an angry guy.
But he was pointing out facts, even though he was doing it aggressively. The way he delivered the message was the problem, I think. It didn't sync with enough people because it was very aggressive. But, he was speaking truth to power. And that's important.
Well, it's important. That's why it was destroyed.
Exactly.
I mean, the thing about Alex Jones was... You said he was buddies with Rogan, right?
Yeah, they're buddies. They still are.
If Rogan had found a way to get Jones into it on the quiet, it could be, it could have things have turned... He probably never would have been allowed to be so big.
No.
I mean, I think he was deliberately... Like a lot of these people... somebody went to him and said, "Look, you got to if you want this channel to grow, you got to drop this whole bloody moon landing thing."
True,
And that's when, and then suddenly, when he started going nearer to the event, suddenly he found it, and I think that's part of the whole way they run that whole thing, the YouTube thing.
but equally at the same time, they started to deconstruct Alex Jones's persona and his person. You know, they completely cancelled him in the sense that they put him under scandal, they bankrupt him, they did everything they could just to get him out of the way and bring Joe Rogan up to the mantle to take his place and to have that subtle control of the narrative of conspiracy, whereas Alex Jones was just pointing it out as it was factually. This is what's happening. You know, Joe Rogan wouldn't do that. He'll get a guest in and, you know, kind of question him and dance around opinion on certain subjects. So yeah,
Well, Joe Rogan he's a comedian.
ultimately,
He's somebody that wants to be liked. You know, that's the last thing Alex Jones was. He didn't give a fig.
no,
He was, as far as he was concerned, if you weren't breaking down the door of the White House, you weren't a proper American. Do you know what I mean? That was his thinking. You know, if you're not trying to get freedom back, you don't even know what America means. That's Alex Jones in a sentence.
yeah, absolutely.
Joe Rogan's the opposite of that. Let's sit around and talk about it.
Yeah,
And
let's
waste
have,
our evening.
let's have a consensus.
And then have a few jokes, and then Eddie, the mad flat earthing fighting guy, will come on and make everything look less stupid, and then we'll do the next show next week. Next week we're talking about Bigfoot, or next week we're talking about,
yeah,
you know, Kevin Spacey, or next week we're going to talk about
Dan Aykroyd on next week.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
doesn't matter
No.
because we're not talking about.
But you're diverting it.
Here's
Yeah.
the proof.
Yeah.
That they diverted everything away from the Twin Towers so 9/11 could
Yeah.
go through. Here's the proof that CNN landed. That's the last thing they want to talk about.
No.
They don't want to hear proof.
No.
All they want to know is that everyone's not thinking about 9/11.
Exactly.
That's all they want to know. And that's the beauty of Joe Rogan. Because, you know, you can sit down and listen to a show and there's no conclusion.
No.
It's just a kind of, okay, well, let's see what happens next week.
And even beyond that, now you have people like the Y-Files, who are exactly the same with no conclusion.
I don't think
Yeah.
for 1 second. I think they were. I think, you know, the way he talks is exactly the same thing. He kind of brandishes himself as this kind of.
It's a more polished.
They're
Joe
gonna
Rogan
they're
now.
gonna shoot me next week.
Yeah.
Kind of, and that's the last thing he is.
Yeah.
If you look at how he does his show, he comes in and goes, "This happened, and this happened, this happened," and
But-
then it all turns out to be complete nonsense.
Yeah. Did it really happen? No, I don't think it did. Right? Yeah. You know, at the
Exactly.
end.
It's all about pulling the rug out from
Yeah.
underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you watch the comments of that channel, everyone's always saying, "Oh, I love this research, the level of research,"
It's not that.
because he enforces it as research by telling you a falsity and then making you realise you're a fool, which is a great skill. And he's a brilliant presenter,
And it's a safe place for the audience, isn't it? It keeps them in
but
that.
it also makes them realise, thank God I didn't go out and tell anyone about that.
Exactly.
He saved me from being a fool. You know, whether he's telling you the truth or not is a completely different thing, but it gives everyone a huge amount of impetus to believe the Y-Files. And good luck to them, you know. The Y-Files is an entertainment channel, just like Joe Rogan. It's got nothing to do with, if you're a real American, get down to the White House and tell them to go themselves. That's not what it's about. It's not like Alex Jones.
No.
It's got no nuts to it. It's just fun.
Yeah. Well, we had a similar guy, obviously, Richard Hall. You know.
Richard Hall, who was bankrupted,
Yeah,
victimised, just like InfoWars.
Just like InfoWars.
Because I think
Raw.
Richard was one of those guys who was properly dangerous
Yeah.
because he was an engineer, an engineer that had worked at nuclear bases in Britain, so he knew everything there was to know about the reality of something like how to build something that lands on Mars. Because if you get building stuff with nuclear bombs is kind of the same kind of level of you've got to get it
the
right.
complexity is quite up there.
Got to get it right. He's done stuff like, automated road systems. Where if you make a mistake, hundreds of thousands of people could be killed. You know what I mean? Everyone on the road could be killed.
Yeah.
You know,
And these people were credible, and their subjects, were hard hitting, and they really would have upset the establishment, and they were just silenced.
and now they're going to be homeless and
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah, it's sad, and that's what that obviously is the worrying thing about information today, where we are being funneled into a world where it's controlled. It's
Well,
no
that-
longer hard hitting. It's no longer factual. It's just an opinion.
That is the control,
Yeah.
isn't it? That is the control. If you start getting close to the truth, we're going to kill you. Just like it was with Apollo. Well, let's face it, Apollo 1. I mean, if you really believe that NASA engineers could accidentally burn 3 people to death in a room full of people with safety, if you really believe that, okay, that's what you believe. Personally, I think that's a bit of a stretch. That could have been an accident. You know, it's a bit like, you know, killing 3 firefighters at a fire engine festival. It just seems like a bit of a tall order, you know. We accidentally burned 3 firefighters to death at the World Firefighting Fair. It just seems like, you know,
Yeah. It's
how,
crazy.
how could you manage? What do you mean you couldn't open the door? What are you talking about? You're a freaking engineer. How could you design a door that you can't open? That doesn't even make the most basic sense.
Yeah.
You know,
Pressurized
so-
and stuff. Yeah.
So those kind of things, like the guys who hit by trains all the way through the Kennedy investigations and everything.
Yeah, and you know, and unalive themselves randomly because they just decided to be depressed on one day, out of all the other days that they weren't. You know, these.
Exactly. You know, helicopters that crash just after they get rid of Bin Laden.
Yeah, it's scary to think that the elite have this much hold over us, but they do, and they have control over the narrative and information, and people are just going to have to get used to it.
We're just going to have to say a couple of minutes about Bibi and his buddies in Israel, though, I think, before we sign off. In my personal opinion, this is what's actually happened. Is that we are at a crux now where madness and reality are face to face with each other. So Bibi is looking at the world around him right now and saying, right, people are starting to think that we control everyone through usury and litigation, and we don't care about anyone else, and we believe everyone else should be dead. Because we're God's chosen people, or we're Zionists, and, you know, they're starting to believe this stuff. So we've got to change TikTok. No behaviour has to change.
No.
You don't have to rein anyone in. We don't have to track down what the Rothschilds are doing or anything like that. We don't have to find out where the bankers have been. We don't have to do anything like that. We have to change what people think by telling them to think something else. And this is where we're at now. We've reached a point where, and I can speak for mad people in my family, this is how they think. When they get shown a picture of themselves, they get very, very dangerous and violent. Because you're talking about getting to something so deep
Ingrained in their
inside of them
existence.
that their self-image is what propels everything they do. Is that, you know, I'm getting out of bed this morning because I'm Brian Cox and I do this, I'm getting out, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
As soon as you start showing that, if you really sat down with Brian Cox and showed him that, you know, he was actually a sort of failed pop star who didn't really do very well in an A-level physics,
Yeah.
what would he do? You know, would he, you know, what's he going to say to you? Oh, I've sold millions of books. It's like, you know, anyone else. You sit down with Winston Churchill and say, well, look, you know, you took us to all these wars and destroyed Britain and everything, you know, what did it? Well, you know, I'm Winston Churchill, I sold all these war diaries, and where does it end? And that's where Israel is. Israel is
It's
at
looking
a
in
point
the mirror.
where they're either going to look in the mirror or they've got to kill everyone.
Yeah.
And I know which one they're going to try and do.
Of course. the one that's least painful to them.
Exactly. Because everyone else is optional, but they're not. God's chosen people are not optional. Everyone else on earth is optional. But
Yeah.
God's chosen people aren't.
No.
And whether it's going to be... if you look at how our world works now, the banking industry... Well, banking is not an industry.
No.
Unless you have usury.
Yeah.
If you have usury, everyone's... Just like the big almighty czar, everyone's scrabbling to try and stay afloat all the time because they're being... Their life is
Manipulated.
being sucked out of them by paying back an amount of money that never even existed until they borrowed it.
Yeah.
And then they charge interest on that. Now, a normal person would call that fraud.
Exactly.
But it's not. It's a banking system, and when the banks start to run out of money, which can only mean for my money, so for my thinking, that the shareholders have taken all the money out of the bank. Because where did all the money that everyone's paid go?
Yeah,
It's got to go somewhere, right?
that's right.
But most of it's not real, and it's all manufactured, and suddenly we've got to bail the banks out, because the bank is a vacuum.
But then it becomes a bonds issue where the taxpayer then
But if I was
pays
gonna,
the bank off
if I was
because
going to
through
liken
bonds.
the bank, the modern bank, to anything in the astronomical universe, it's a black hole.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter how much money you put in it;
it's
it's always going to be empty.
yeah.
Whenever you open the door, it's always empty because there's no real money. It's just a scam.
It's all the pyramid scheme that's created to enrich the select few who live off the interests.
And if you want to try and take them to court, there's only one place you can go.
They're cool.
And if you look in their holy books, as it says, if there's two people in a court, make sure you always let the other one of you off. That's what it says in their holy book. So the legal system is intrinsically part of their holy system.
Doctrine, yeah.
Money and law are part of their religion.
Insane, isn't it?
So, and that's how our whole world works. So make no mistake about it, they can kill all of us
And they
just
will try.
by making a law.
And it'll look like they'll try. I mean, I haven't seen BB on the television for a while. He's disappeared. As soon as the missiles started flying, he kind of jetted off to Germany out of all places.
Yeah, that's
And-
what's funny. That's a
And
very
that's the
safe
irony
place.
of that. And then he's just disappeared, and there's been word that he's been killed, or he's been put in a coma or whatever.
And his facelift.
And it's just what is going on? What is actually happening? We don't know what's true and what's not. But yeah, so
It's definitely reached what I feel is where the madness has become public for the first time. Things like the great mass murder of them during the Second World War. If you look through the whole history of sort of Napoleon and all the way through, up until that point, they'd avoided everything, and then suddenly this massive event happened where that sort of absconded them of any of the guilt. The guilt's suddenly been swapped onto us. It's our now everything's our fault.
yeah,
But we're not the ones making the money or controlling the media or the banks or the litigation.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed, and yet that event has made everything everyone else's fault.
yeah.
So now you
Even
see
that's changing now.
in New York, they're not safe to walk down the streets. In the most safe place for them on earth with all their money and everything, they're not safe to walk down the streets. They are projecting. They're like a child. They're trying to project an idea to make a reality to get people to take action, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's absolutely at the core of a mad person, is a child. Somebody who's never been to heck and back. It's just a child. Somebody who's perfectly capable of breaking down like a baby. And that's where they'll go. If you really show them themselves,
yeah,
they'll get to that point and they'll cry like a baby.
yeah.
Because that's their centre, their core. That's what makes them tick. And I think that taking Israel there is extremely dangerous. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the next
Week
2
or
years.
2. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
in the coming weeks. I mean,
if Iran's got nuclear capability, if China's given them nuclear capability, if Russians give them nuclear capability, and I think it's very likely they have, if that's really how things work.
yeah, that's where it starts.
But you've got to bear in mind that there's a lot of the Israel type guys in Russia. That's where BB's from. BB's
Poland.
from Russia.
Yeah, it's Poland. Did you know BB's cousin, his father's brother's son, is the president of Argentina?
Well, he's got another cousin.
Did you not know? Did you know that?
So his father's brother's what?
His father, Bibi Netanyahu's father.
Well, because his grandfather invented Zionism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So the son of the inventor of Zionism. Yeah.
they obviously he had a brother. His father had a brother.
Right. So
who
his
moved
uncle,
to
BB's
Argentina.
uncle.
BB's uncle son is the president of Argentina.
So his cousin is the president of Argentina.
Yeah. And there has been a lot of influx of Israelis into Argentina, buying up land and clearing forests.
So I've heard.
And
So-
causing
so
a lot of
all
issues.
the Nazis there didn't bother them.
No. Obviously not.
Couldn't make it up.
Could make it up. The world is a very strange place today, and you know there's so much to talk about and so much to get into.
So does that mean that he must be Jewish?
I guess so.
Because you have to have a. Oh, I said the J word.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't put that out.
Well, that's what I was trying to end the show.
No, well, just then that was the last thing to say then, because to be a grey, as Static in the Attic calls them,
Yeah.
you have to have a grey mother. That's the actual official thing. But nowadays, anyone who's got, like, even if it's your great-great-grandfather's uncle, you know, that makes you in the club.
Could be converted enough. Yeah.
You're in the club. So I mean, now, I mean, what does Robert Downey Jr. really believe about Israel? Do you know what I mean?
They're very quiet now.
They not. You know, what does Natalie Portman believe? She's got a doctorate in psychology, hasn't she, from Israel?
Yes.
She was born there.
Mm.
You don't hear her say anything.
Or Quentin Tarantino, who still lives in Israel.
Well, I think he's just gone completely bonkers, as far as I can make out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm talking about the actual proper members. Not Tarantino's not a proper member. He's just married into it. You know. I mean, what do the real people really believe now?
But they're very quiet. The minute they say something, their image comes under fire because obviously it's not a very popular subject to be in support of. You know, it's one thing I think to support Israel. It's another thing to obviously be a Zionist. I think they're very closely linked, obviously. But you know, one has a kind of tinge.
There's a connection. I mean, to believe that they have a right to this country, formerly known as Palestine, that's not the same thing as believing everyone else has to be killed.
No.
Like someone like Bibi believes.
Exactly.
But if you ask me, Bibi isn't right on the top of the ladder. He's not like kind of Rothschild level. He's a bit like someone like
Well,
Farage.
Yeah.
He's just completely barking mad and
He's just a
extremely
mouthpiece.
useful.
Yeah, he's useful
you know,
with it, yeah.
You know, that's where he is. And I think that's what we're going to find out quite soon, is whether or not the Rothschilds are Zionists. Are they really Zionists, or are they just...
Or the globalist.
Are they bonesmen, kind of? Are they Hegelian kind of people? Are they going to use Israel just like they've used everywhere else? I mean, when you look at the whole way the First and Second World War, the fact that the Zionist guys bought Palestine during the First World War, it kind of makes it look like that was the Rothschilds' intent all along, but it doesn't mean that it was.
No.
I mean, as far as I can see, all the Rothschilds really care about is money and evil.
Yeah, money, power, and an evil outlook on the world. And, you know, the fact that they've sponsored both sides of World War II.
They can't unsponsor Russia.
Yeah.
The J guys are... Russia is their home, and Germany. That's where they lived for 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, you can't just undo that. All their traditions and food and all this stuff is over there. In a way that it probably isn't in New York so much. You know, probably maybe it is now, but bear in mind the first ever J state was not Israel. It was actually in a blast in eastern Russia near Vladivostok. I mean, so we're just going to have to wait and see. I mean, my personal feeling is that this is another proxy war being conducted by...
It's the proxy war they've wanted for a very, very long time. So it's not going to be like other proxy wars. This war has to have an outcome one way or another. And I think, you know, I don't know what is going to be positive that comes out of it.
Is it going to be nuclear?
It could easily escalate to that. It
You've
just
got
depends
to think,
on who.
If Russia, particularly China, is really a big ally of Iran, like they claim.
Well, they're very dependent on their natural resources, and they've signed a 10-year arms deal with China.
They've got to have nukes.
Yeah, China want to test the
Not
test their missiles out as
necessarily
well.
not necessarily massive
Tactical
ICBM.
nukes. Tactical nukes.
Well, not necessarily tactical nukes, but at least
Tactical nukes are the smaller nukes, so that it will have to be tactical or nothing.
okay. But but either way, I'm talking about the kind of nukes you can drop out of a plane.
Yeah,
Those kind of nukes.
that's tactical.
Even that over because one of the things about Israel is its pockets of population are very dense. When it comes to nuclear weapons, they have the worst possible
Layout for
because they're a desert country like Iran. So everyone lives in places like Tehran or Tel Aviv or obviously Jerusalem,
yeah.
the Holy Lands that everyone's been fighting over forever. I mean, if somebody dropped a nuke over that, then someone's going to push the end of the world button, aren't they?
Yeah, that's going to be the beginning of the end, if it gets pushed to that. But I don't think Iran will fire the first nuke. I think it'll be the US.
How would we know?
Yeah, how would we know?
We'd never know.
That's the thing. The information provided
For
to us
all we know, they'd drop a nuke over over Jerusalem to start it. For all we know.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't even. What if it wasn't even a real nuke? What if they dropped something like a flare?
They've done their Moab bomb already, which is very, very close to the kind of explosive power that a small tactical nuclear weapon would do. Close, but not quite there. But yeah, it
But
could
they
be
could do
manipulated in any
They could
way.
do that. They could fire. They could literally fire a sunburst.
No, they'll do a false flag.
Starburst,
They'll
rather.
happily do a false flag to start anything. They've already started that. They've already done that. The first salvo in this war was a girls' school. That was the girls' school of all the military leaders in the Iran military, just to rile them up.
Bennett.
You know,
And that is.
That's definitely an Israeli idea. That's not. I don't think something the Americans would directly do.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but it just reminds me of the kind of tactics you used to hear that supposedly the British operated. It just makes you wonder who was in charge of the British, or
Demons.
because that is a tactic I'd never. I mean, if somebody suggested that in a fucking in a meeting room I was in, I don't even know what I'd do to that person.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what's the matter with you?
Yeah.
Blowing up a girls' school? What's the point in even winning a war if you're the sort of person who blows up a girls' school?
Exactly.
I
They
mean,
wanted to go that low.
yeah. What kind of victory are
It's
you
another
ever going to
level,
have?
Murray. It's another
That
level,
is chosen people tactics.
Yeah, that is chosen people tactics.
And I think that maybe there's been more of that throughout history than anyone's prepared to accept.
And we'll never know because the information we're given is controlled by them.
Well, I think there's a few more points I'd love to talk about later on, but I think let's take a break there.
Yeah.
And
we'll catch up again soon.
Catch up again soon, and
Yeah, we'll see where the world is.
I told you it
next
was going to
week
be an interesting talk. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Till
Yes.
next time.